Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jaco with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. We're going to be talking about wild horse management today, and it's a very interesting subject. William E. Simpson II has been living among and studying a herd of wild feral horses in the wilderness on the California side of the Oregon-California border. Simpson is the founder and executive director of the Wild Horse Fire Brigade, LLC, a wild horse advocacy and management group. In March 2022, Siskiyou County officially recognized the ownership of the local herd of cultural heritage horses, as well as management authority over the local herd. So Siskiyou County is doing amazing things. They're doing really good stuff with the the voting process. I've had some of their people on talking about that. And here you are doing what I think everyone should be paying attention to, having wild feral horses graze the land so we don't have these crazy fires. Thanks for coming on, William.
Hey, thank you for having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is amazing. I mean, I was looking at some of your videos. We'll play a few of them, just for reference. There was like back in the 90s, $700 million worth of damage from wildfires. And just recently, 7 billion. And we need to come up with some solutions.
Well, it's really worse than that, Mike. The UCLA study, which has been sequestered by who knows who, somebody in the government doesn't want people to see this. An 11-year study by UCLA, 11-year study, UCLA, said that during their study, 5,000 Californians a year died prematurely from wildfire smoke. And over the 11 years, the economic damage was $435 billion. Now, anybody can find it. You just Google UCLA death toll wildfire smoke, and you'll find that study. It's shocking. So and that was just California. So I dropped it into a supercomputer and I said, please extrapolate this data across the Western United States, right? Because we're all suffering from catastrophic fire and the deadly smoke. Well, the supercomputer did the math, and it said that based on the UCLA data, and this is UCLA, this isn't some Mickey Mouse University somewhere in Romania. They said that the supercomputer said that we're looking at 36,000 Americans dead prematurely in the Western U.S. alone. 36,000 dead prematurely, men, women, children, nurses, doctors, pilots. Doesn't matter where you are. You could be 100 miles away from the fire. You breathe the smoke, you die. And then the damage from that is $218 billion a year. And so the structural damages that you just cited, that the insurance companies, and those were insured coverages, are just the beginning of what this is costing us. You look at the lives, American lives. And then the computer told me also that it cannot correlate or calculate the comorbidities created by the toxins in the wildfire smoke. So what's happening is we have a collapsed herbivore in California. The deer and the elk are really way down. We're down, some people say 1.5, maybe 2 million deer in California that are no longer here, that were here 20, 30 years ago. Now, what that means is we've got about 3 million tons of annual grass and brush that's no longer grazed in remote areas where you can't have livestock. I mean, we have all these remote areas and they're loaded with wolves, lions, bears. Where I live, I have wolves, lions, bears, they eat horses, trust me. Then they eat the deer and the elk. So when you're in a position where you have that many million tons of wildfire, or wildfire fuel, I should say, we're talking 3 million tons just in California. What do you do about all that? I mean, you can't put livestock everywhere because, hey, when I was a rancher growing up, I didn't want the predators eating my lambs and my calves because we couldn't pay the mortgage. Our family was poor. And so I had to ride around and shoot predators just so that we can make mortgage payments. And that was back in the 60s. I'm older now. So I'm 73 now. So I've lived a few lives. And so we're looking at California, and this collapsed herbivore is why we have the fire. It's not climate change. Climate does have an impact on the fuel. What it does is it dries it out sooner, it keeps it dry longer, and any source of ignition is what sets it off. And of course, we can't control human behavior or the hand of God, lightning, anything. We can't control the fuel. And the way we do that is the U.S. government now has the equivalent of FEMA camps or state-based gitmos for these wild horses. They round them up, they brand them, they sterilize them, and then they put them in off-range holding back in Oklahoma and Ohio and Indiana on failed cattle ranches that graze their ground to the dirt. All you have to have is a fence, and you can get a BLM contract to hold them. So they put them in these contract holding facilities or prisons for horses, basically, and then they charge all of us $150 million a year to feed them. So it's like putting the fire department in jail during fire season and then having taxpayers pay for DoorDash or something. It's like, what? And it's ridiculous. And so our plan is simple. Wild Horse Fire Brigade. We take the horses out of government holding. They're all sterilized, put them into the deep wilderness where they're not going to be in conflict with other economic interests on public land. I mean, let's face it, we got to have gas, minerals, and oil. Other we're not, how do you make America great again without materials, right? And we need livestock. Everybody likes to eat. 97% of Americans eat meat. That's a fact. So we need livestock. So our plan actually creates more grazing. We take the horses out of holding, put them in the wilderness. They mow that down and keep it clean. Yeah, they get eaten by the lions and the bears and everything. But guess what? The modern horse that we see, been here 2 million years. That's been going on a long time, and that's why they're still here. Natural selection. It's kind of like the Navy SEALs. The weak ring out. The tough guys go forward. And the bottom line is what we see today, those are the guys who we're in. They're operators. And I don't want to see them in jail out there.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I know in your area, they, some ranches like went under and they just let the horses go into the field, and they got wild that way. But you guys are like raising them. You're taking them from different sources. Now, why are the deer in such a decline? What's going on with that?
Well, let me just make a small correction here, Mike. First of all, our herd was seen in 1580 by Sir Francis Drake. The ancestors of our herd are post-Ice Age survivors. Okay, they didn't go extinct. That's not true. They were seen by Drake. He was a military officer, serving British Knight. Queen Elizabeth sent him up to the Pacific Northwest because she wanted this area. And so when they got to the Klamath River, there was a lot of gold in the Klamath River back then. There's a lot of gold in the Rogue River, and they spotted that and they go, aha, the indigenous must have golden idols. So because that's what everybody found on the East Coast, right? I mean, the Spaniards were running into all these indigenous, all this golden gems. So they went up the rivers, and lo and behold, Drake's team saw horses living with the indigenous in 1580. Now, that's just 88 years after Columbus first saw America. So there was no way any of them horses they brought to the East Coast made it all the way out here in 88 years. Impossible. So our herd, there is a combination, and feral is a term that's misunderstood by the public, Mike. So I'm going to make a quick explanation of feral. So feral, there's two kinds of feral. If I have a pet cat and then I just let it go loose and I move away, and that's a feralized cat then. But feral, in terms of horse management, has a whole different, it's a jurisdictional terminology. And so when a wild horse is standing on one of the herd management areas that President Nixon created, walks off of that area onto somebody else's property, depending on whose property they're standing on, they could either be unauthorized livestock, okay, that's another term, or they can be feral horses. And what that means, feral horse means without ownership. It has nothing to do with their genetics. See, and that's where people get it all confused. Yeah, certainly the cavalry let some horses go in this area. Fort Jones had cavalry, and they were, dealing with the Native Americans here at that time. But our herd, we see phenotypes that we know are ancient horse phenotypes. So saying that. So going back to your question, can you hit me with that one more time, Mike?
Yeah, that's a great explanation about, how they're, they've been here for millions of years, really. That's pretty incredible. And so deer, why are we losing the deer? What's going on?
That was it. Thank you. So in the West Coast, people like hunting. I used to hunt all the time. I had to hang up my rifles because I found out that in California, we're down about 1.5 million deer, roughly. It's so bad that California Fish and Wildlife really don't even do a real census anymore. Now, it's an aggregate of things that are putting pressure on the herds. It's hunting, over-harvesting. It's vehicular accidents because we have more roads and there's dead deer all over the place. And we also have problems with poaching and disease. So the aggregate of these things are really, and then these wildfires are killing a lot of herbivores, deer and elk too. So there's a phenomenal amount of pressure and the herds are collapsed. And then when you have, of course, predators, those guys are bad boys. They're tough operators, and predators, wolves, lions, bears, they don't go away so easy, and they're going to find a meal. So when you collapse you take all the food out of their refrigerator, guess what? They're coming to your house for dinner, and they're going to come down into the valleys, and they're going to find livestock to eat and all that other stuff that's there. So when you don't have enough prey animals, you skew the relationship, the prey predator relationship changes, and it actually creates increased unnatural pressure on the herbivores, the deer and the elk and the horses. So having the BLM run around out here and the U.S. Forest Service rounding up the last big herbivores, which, by the way, are the most beneficial herbivores. Wild horses are the most beneficial herbivore because deer, elk, cows, sheep, and goats are ruminants. And a ruminant has a multi-chambered stomach, right? So when they eat seeded grasses and plants, the food goes down the first chamber, and then they go lay down, they ruminate, they burp up the cud, and they chew it over and over again. Well, that kills all the seeds. It crushes them. It's a mechanical damage issue. And then when they go through the rest of their digestive tract, the seeds that come out in their poop really don't grow. Very few seeds grow in the poop of herbivores. That's cows, sheep, goats, deer, and elk. Now, a horse has a stomach like us, and they're really bad digesters. So when you look at horse poop, and I do this, we study, horse manure, because you open it up and it looks like you can see branches and leaves intact. You can see seeds. And so Oregon State, where I went to school, I was a pre-med science major, they did a study. It's called the germinability of horse dung. And they found, and I think they fed the horses like 230 different kinds of seeds. And they found out that roughly 90% of the seeds come out in their poop and grow. So wild horses are farmers. They actually walk around and they plant more seeds than they need the following year for themselves. So guess who benefits? The deer, the elk, all the other critters that eat any kind of grass or brush, and then even the butterflies and the bees, because they need flowering plants, right?
God.
So the horses.
That's another question I was going to ask you. Why not, have sheep so now I see. I remember one of the videos where they were saying that, around the trees and so forth, they're knocking off the low branches. That helps with the fire problem. And they poop around them, and the trees, become more luscious and, very fertile. So it's a win-win situation with the horses. God, we got to do this. It's like crazy. It's so easy.
Well, we did something that nobody in the world has done, Mike. We watched what happened. Our horses grazed in a huge area up here, big fire breaks, low fuel areas. And when we had a big fire, it's called the Klamathon Fire, burned the town of Hornbrook to the ground, 38,000 acre wind-blown monster. So I was the local knowledge advisor because we had guys up here from Fresno, 600 miles away that, it was a bad year at 2018. Fire guys were all over the place. So we got Fresno and a guy from down by you, in fact, National Park Service, Yosemite. The fire commander from there came up. His name was Randall. And they were actually up here looking at a map in the wilderness. Everybody was evacuated. I walked down to see how the fire was coming over the ridge. And I ran into them, the two pickup trucks with the tailgates down on a map. I kind of scared them a little bit. I walked up behind them and they go, "Oh, what are you here? You're supposed to be evacuated." And I go, "No, I'm not going anywhere. I grew up in these mountains. I know how to fight fire. I logged. I'm not worried about it." And they go, "Oh, you live here?" And I go, "Yeah." They said, "Well, show us where we are on this map." And they were just lost. And I looked at the map and it wasn't their fault. The people that gave them the map, it had a bunch of fancy logos across the whole bottom, U.S. Forest, BLM, OES, Siskiyou County, Sheriff, this, that. And I look at the map and I go, "Well, you're not even on the map." And they go, "What?" I go, "Yeah, you're below the logos here. The map starts at the Oregon border. It's 3 miles to the north." And they go, "Oh my goodness." And then I'm looking at the map and I says, "By the way, this map is not good." And they go, "What do you mean?" I says, "Well, there's a bunch of logging roads up here for you guys to need to know about. If you want to fight this fire, you're going to need to infill a bunch of equipment and men. And if you don't know where the roads are, you're in trouble. There's no roads on your map that are up here. And there's ranches up here that aren't even depicted." They go, "What?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm serious." And they say, "Oh, well, we got to get up there and prep them for fire. You're going to have to be our local knowledge advisor." So I said, fine, I'll volunteer. Let's go. Let's stop this fire. Because I also knew where the fire breaks were created by the horses. So I was on the fire line 9 days, and I got lung damage, and the smoke killed my wife. So the toxins that killed them 5,000 people that same year, 5,000 other Californians died. She was one of them. And it's toxins in the smoke. It isn't PM 2.5. There's new science that just came out December of 25 from the American Chemical Society. There's VOCs that they didn't know were in the smoke. 21% more VOCs, which are toxic organic compounds. And so anyway, I was on the line 9 days. I watched that fire get to the low fuel areas that the horses created. That's where we put it out. When we saved a college town called Ashland, Oregon, and we saved the whole old growth forest up here. So hopefully we'll have sustainable timber harvest in the future. I'd like to see logging come back, but because the timber industry is important in the Pacific Northwest. And if we're burning the forest to the ground, nobody's going to get, it doesn't help anybody. And so we stopped it. And here's the funny thing, Mike. 2 months before that fire, Colorado College came down and did a graduate thesis film on my research. And I was filming right up there in one of the fire breaks over my shoulder, the horses grazing down this huge area, 1,000-acre area. And everything I said in that film 2 months before the fire came true 2 months later during the actual fire. So nobody can argue with me anymore about this. So unfortunately, though, I'm being suppressed. People don't want to hear about it because they think I'm going to break people's rice bowls because so much money is being made in firefighting now.
Yeah.
I mean, our town houses firefighters, hotels, restaurants, and all that. And I'm going, okay, guys, look, I get it. You're making money, but you're killing 5,000 Americans with this smoke in our state every year. We've got to get into a prevention mode, not a firefighting mode. That's too late.
Yeah, they need to transition into managing the land, and then we won't have these crazy fires and people dying. Wow, I'm sorry to hear about your wife, William. That's crazy. That's very sad. So you're a direct, unfortunate victim of this unland management that's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, I paid a price. We paid a heavy price for the knowledge we have today. I mean, but we have knowledge now that nobody else has. With my own eyes. The other thing that was blown me away, Mike, is the horses aren't afraid of fire. These wild horses, here comes the fire. They're like, 75 yards away from the oncoming flames. They're just grazing. I got a picture of it. I've been putting it in my article. These guys are just head down grazing. And I got to thinking about that. I'm going, they're first of all, we have horse fossils up here, so they're grazing over the bones of their ancestors, right?
Yeah.
What could be more natural than that? And then on top of it, when they're grazing, they're still managing the fuel right in front of the fire. They'd occasionally look up and then look down, but they were here 1 million years ago when Mount Shasta was erupting. They were here when Tahoe was erupting. They were here when Crater Lake was erupting. They've seen lava. Their ancestors have seen lava. And so, they're not like the horses the Spaniards reintroduced. By the way, those are made in America. The horses that the Europeans brought back, those were made in America. They crossed over Beringia 1 million years ago. All horses in the world originally evolved right here in North America 55 million years ago.
Wow.
And then the most successful line was Equus caballus, the modern horse we all see today. Well, 1 million years ago, when the landmass between Alaska and Siberia connected them together, some of our horses went across into Eurasia. And then over that next 1 million years that they were in Eurasia, they evolved into subspecies. That's how we got zebras, Polsky horses, Konik horses, all these different horses with different characteristics. They had a chance to evolve in that new land. But in the meantime, they were still here, right? And then about 220,000 years ago, deer, elk, and bison came from Asia into North America. They're Asian immigrants. And so, when people talk about when President Nixon signed the 1971 Free Roaming Wild Horse and Burro Protection Act, he was honoring American heritage. We built America off their backs. We fought wars off our horses' backs. We owe them. Morally, we should salute them every year, because there would be no civilization. There would be no America. There was no eagle and buggy, right, Mike?
Yeah,
There was no eagle and buggy. It was horse and buggy. And,
absolutely.
so we've got to, are we Americans or what? We need to have a little bit of moral fiber and show a little loyalty to the animals that supported our livelihoods.
Very good, William. Let's watch a little clip that you gave me and get a little bit deeper insight, and we'll discuss.
This for Invest TV. The California nonprofit Wild Horse Fire Brigade hopes to drive down those losses and mitigate catastrophic wildfires with its natural wildfire abatement and forest protection plan that relies on the help of an unlikely resource.
Wildfires require three key ingredients: oxygen, fuel, and an ignition source. Wind does not fuel a fire. Fuel fuels the fire. In this case, we're talking about grass and brush. We cannot change the oxygen content of the air, nor can we control ignition sources such as lightning or human behavior. The one thing we can control are annually occurring grass and brush fuels using animals such as wild horses that eat grass and brush, also known as herbivores. In the Western United States, we have a very well-known collapse of the herbivore. We may be down as many as 3 million deer in California, and Oregon is down approximately 500,000 deer. When you have a collapse of the herbivory, catastrophic wildfire evolves. By reestablishing the herbivory, what we do is we start reducing these fuels and we devolve catastrophic fires.
Being able to do vegetation control targeted on ground fuels, both at the individual property level and at the community level, is the number one driver for decreasing risk.
These big, robust animals, weighing 1,000 to 1,200 pounds, rub up against low-hanging limbs. They call those fire ladders. They break them off. And so basically the tree is removed of all the low limbs, and they remove the grass under the tree because they're there under the tree resting, so they graze the grass, and they fertilize the tree with their droppings. So these trees are made fire resilient. Today in the United States, we have 60,000 American wild horses that have been captured off the wilderness and put into taxpayer-funded government holding, and we're feeding them the grass instead of leaving them where they're going to do some good for societies. Each wild horse will eat about 30 pounds of grass and brush a day, about 5.5 tons a year.
In the last 5 years, from the insurance industry perspective, the losses have not only doubled and tripled, but they're 10, 20, 50-fold as high as they used to be. It used to average $700 million a year in losses in the 90s. Now the insurance industry pays on average $7 billion.
These wildfires.
Yeah, and a lot more from what you're saying, William. So that's
It's a lot.
what you're saying. 10 times more again, and 100 times more. Jesus.
Well, the cost in human blood. I mean, the Americans that are dying, these are little kids, little baby boys and girls that are a couple years old. They breathe this in, and then they develop a comorbidity and die when they're 20 or 30. And they can't. The computer said it couldn't even compute that. And we just know like on my wife's death certificate, it says autoimmune neurodegenerative disease from wildfire smoke. Now we know about those people, but also the computer said we can't even begin to calculate the losses that come 5-10 years later from people who develop a comorbidity and don't die immediately. The human treasure. I mean, we're losing our families, our friends, people, pilots, nurses, people like you doing important work like this. We're losing them. They just die. I mean, that has to stop. I don't care how much money these guys make fighting fire. They have to go flip burgers if they need to, but we can't be killing Americans so a small group of people can make money. That's got to end.
Yeah, I totally agree. And let me share that that one Horse of Nature award-winning documentary about how wild horses mitigate wildfire. So this is really good. A little bit of your information in here. So.
This fire broke out yesterday afternoon, the day after Independence Day.
All right, little download problem there, but yeah, goes on and talks about, how this is very tragic indeed.
It is.
So that's one of those things that, you have had experience with, unfortunately, and you are, warning all of us right now. It's every year seems to get worse. I know in California, we're the only state right now, in California, the first time in 25 years that we don't have drought anywhere in California. And I promise you, there'll be fires this year. There'll be big fires.
Oh yeah.
Supposed to get another round
Yeah.
of snow to help, but it's the way it works here in California. It's like there's this group that seems to be maybe even making these fires happen. I don't know.
Yeah, well, like I said, we can't control that. We, like Marcus Aurelius says in Meditations, don't worry about the things you can't change. Don't worry about the things you can. And we can control fuel, and nature does it best. She does it. These herbivores, like up here where I am, my herd of horses. I'm not worried about my place burning because I've got what I call a defensible landscape, a defensible space that the Cal Fire tries to sell you on is useless. You could go out 100 feet, but when you have a hillside full of grass and brush next to you, the heat front from that fire with a wind on it is going to incinerate your house from 200-300 feet away. The flames don't even need to get there. The heat front will just cause things to combust. Now, I fought fire when I was a logger, and we never saw molten aluminum on the fire scenes. You never seen a molten aluminum ladder, molten aluminum engine blocks or mags. Today, these fires are so hot as a function of fuel. When your cabin gets cold, what do? You put more fuel in, it makes more energy, more heat. When you have all this grass and brush that's not mowed down in the wilderness, the heat is abnormal. It is abnormal. Fire resilient trees, entire forests of trees that need fire. And we do need normal fire. I don't want to misinform anybody here. Normal fire is important for a forest, but it doesn't destroy the forest. It burns low and slow into the trees, cleans the understory of the forest. It helps the reproductive cycle of the conifers because it opens cones and does things. So the bottom line is, when you lose your herbivory that's managing the understory fuels in a forest, it burns abnormally hot. And we've seen this time and time again. An entire fire evolved forest, trees that need fire, dead, burned to the dirt. And that's an indication something is seriously wrong. And what it is the collapsed herbivory. And I'm not saying Wild Horse Fire Brigade is a silver bullet here, Mike. What I'm saying is it's a baby step to a successful repopulation of herbivores. We got 70,000 lawnmowers, and I'm being stingy. I want 70,000 for California. I mean, I get it. Everybody's dying in Washington, Oregon, in Idaho, and Montana. Same problem. But, we got to put these horses somewhere. And California is getting hammered by these fires. People are being dead. If we put these horses here, we can do that right now. And guess what? We save $150 million a year. Trump should be all over the top of this, But the gatekeepers are keeping me out. Right now, I'm fighting with the corrupt agencies that they like the flow of cash the way it is. A lot of guys are getting envelopes full of money. These horses, how do American wild horses with brands on their neck, you can't mistake them. How are they ending up going to Mexico and being put in the meat grinder? Those are American assets. That's conversion. That's a federal crime, But people are, the payola, this has got to stop. So we could put them out here, and we will see a dent in these fires. These guys will put a dent. Now, it's not the silver bullet. We still have to do something about deer and elk. And that's easy because guess what, Mike? In 1910, California issued a moratorium on deer hunting because the gold miners out here, they didn't want to leave their claims. They were shooting all the game animals around their claims. And so we had a collapse in 1910. We went from 3 million deer in California to 500,000 deer in 1910. Well, the California government says, all right, that's it. No hunting. Starting 1910, no hunting. No more deer hunting. It took, I think it was like 10, 15 years. They brought the herd back up to 3 million, and then they let them hunt again. Well, guess what? Today, we're below 400,000. We're even lower than the threshold that triggered it last time at 500. So 500K was the trigger in 1910. Now we're below 400. We're not doing anything. And there's more pressure on the herds than there ever was before. So,
Mm.
this whole management paradigm, but the horses are the first step. We can do that immediately. President Trump could do an executive order. All those incarcerated American treasured horses are to be released. They're all sterilized, so they're not going to interfere with any. They're not going to breed or overpopulate. That's another myth. You put them out there in the deep wilderness, and these geldings, you can put pairs of 2 at a time, like on hills around you. They don't breed or anything. They're already gelded, so they're just big old boys. They just walk around and mow your lawn for free and trim your trees, and then they go under a tree and take a nap in their beautiful landscape. I mean, talk about the best yard art you could hope for.
Absolutely.
A treasured American. Yeah. And then in the deep wilderness, you do want breeding herds because there's predators, and predators control population. BLM lies through their teeth. Now, I'm not being hard on the BLM. These are facts, Mike. They published a document to the U.S. Congress in 2018, a plan for managing wild horses and burros. And on, I think it was paragraph 2 of page 1 of the executive summary, it said, wild horses have no natural predators. Now, that is an absolute lie. And whoever wrote that should go to prison, because that's also a crime. Using public tax money to write a felonious statement and then presenting it to the Congress people, that's a crime. Now, the thing is everything eats them, been eating them for 2 million years. That's just a fact. And they say because of that, because of the lie, they claim that herds double every 4 years in size. So if you have 100 horses in 4 years, it's 200 horses. So if you have 200 horses in 4 years, it's 800 or 400 horses, so forth. So I've been here studying my herd of 200 since 2012. Now, according to the BLM, I should have over 800 horses out here. I have 200 horses today. And the reason being is they're being eaten by mountain lions, bears, coyotes, and wolves. So I have a stable population because the predators are. Why are they overpopulating in the areas where the government's managing them? It's because they shot all their natural predators. So that they got livestock commingled with wild horses. Nixon didn't plan on that when he passed the act. President Nixon assigned 53 million acres for the horses, not for cattle and livestock, for the horses. It's in the 1971 Free Roaming Wild Horse Burro Protection Act. And I understand those in those big areas. There's a lot of areas with livestock grazing on BLM land now. The livestock guys don't want to have their calves and lambs and stuff eaten by predators. So the USDA hunters come in, and they're all shooters, right? And they just get rid of the predators. Well, you've just killed all the predators that normally control the horse population that's commingled. So what happens? They do the same thing the livestock do. They overpopulate. Well, livestock production is about overpopulation. So it's a man-caused problem. It's not the horse. It's a management problem. And what I say is, fine, guys, move the horses out of those areas and let's put them where they do some good for taxpayers. And it's a no-brainer, Mike. I can't believe these people aren't all over the top of it. The insurance industry is, as you can see.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the wilderness. I walked the Pacific Crest Trail, spent over 2,000 miles. And I saw all the burned land back there. It's disgusting. They're not doing any land management back there, just letting it burn. These horses would do incredible work back there and probably save that and make it, more people would like to go back there. And, the national park lands are all burned too. So we need this. Now, get into California, make it, work. Everybody can see it. How long will it take to, spread it to other states, and how many states could actually use this?
Well, I would start with, I'm just asking Siskiyou County to support me. And you mentioned Pacific Crest Trail. That is in the Six Rivers National Forest, by the way. That's a 1 million acre U.S. forest. And we already have MOUs with livestock guys to graze on the edges of it where there ain't too many big predators. So they're already on the very outside edges of that, using livestock to graze fuels. And that's sensible. But in the deep part, like where you're talking about, the burns, because there's no more deer and elk out there to speak of. I mean, they're really collapsed. We could put 1,000 horses there. We can get them, and some people will argue with me, well, Bill, we don't have any law that lets us do that. Well, guess what? And if you ask the BLM, is there any way we can do Bill's plan and move horses into the wilderness? They, oh no, but right on their own website, if you Google BLM, Humane Transfer of Excess Animals Act, it's right on the BLM's website that any government agency can ask for horses through BLM, Humane Transfer of Excess Animals Act. And it'll bring up a page, and lo and behold, it's right on the BLM's own website. They'll never tell you it's there. They lie by omission too. That's another way they lie to the American people, is by omission. Yeah, I tell people, look, there is a law. It's a federal act. It says that any government authority, a city, a town, a county, a state, you go to the BLM and you say, hey, I need 500 horses and I need them for wildfire fuel management. They got to give them to you. Because under this act, Mike, what happens is you get the wild horse from the government, and it's actually, you got to go to the BLM. You got to Google. That's it. That is it. But if you go to, I want to show how corrupt the BLM is. If you type in Google BLM, you type in BLM, Humane Transfer of Excess Animals Act, in your search window.
Yeah, see if I can get it back up here. So,
Go to,
so that's right.
there it is down there. See BLM's? Yeah, that one. There you go. Click on that one. Nope, go down. Nope, right there. With the green logo, right there.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. See, that's right at the BLM site.
And the burrows. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's what that says. It says that any government authority can request animals and they got to give them to you. Well, when you get them under this act, their designation changes from wild horse to work animal. There's a change in title, another change in title, right? And under the exclusion clause the U.S. Forest has, they can do anything they want to do to prevent the forest from burning, including deploying work animals. Okay, so you get the horses and you drop them in 6 rivers in the boondocks out there. Nobody will see them again except for the hikers on PCT, and they'll help reduce those fires and the toxic smoke. And we save $150 million a year.
Easily.
We don't have to feed them in a jail cell anymore. And then they get to live wild and free. You know, their freedom is important too. I mean, this is America. Freedom is important to everybody. And the Lakota Nation considered the horses a nation of sentient beings. They call them the horse nation, the Lakota tribes.
Beautiful.
And because they respected them, it was a beautiful relationship that they had with those horses. And there's no reason why Americans can't have that relationship again, where the horses benefit humankind again, because they helped us build civilization around the whole world. So this is just, I don't understand what the pushback is. We have the law that lets us do it. We just get an MOU with the Forest Service that we're putting work animals. They're sterilized. They're not going to overpopulate. We got 70,000 of them that are sterilized. Drop them out there, start mowing the lawn, and they reseed it. And guess what that does? Remember all that burned land you saw, Mike, when you were hiking PCT? Well, guess what? When it rains in the winter, all the mud comes down the sides of them hills and covers all the fish eggs. All the salmon and steelhead come swimming up right in the fall in late summer to spawn. And then the winter rains come, it covers the eggs. Guess what happens? All those eggs die. They suffocate. And then the fish are gone. And then everybody goes, oh, it must be the dams. No, wrong. It wasn't the dams. It was the fires. But nobody's out there. This is what I do for a living now. I'm 73. I'm supposed to be retired. I'm working 120 hours a week, trying to help people. I'm trying to save American lives, Mike.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. Now we do have the youngsters now. You've had them up on your property. These 2 ladies from Sacramento State. So they're learning, from you, and that's what we need in the future. We need to get more people involved like this, and then, I mean, we have the right to start bringing these animals and start to place them, because it's already in the law. It's in the law, so it's an easy fix. We just have to get people educated so that we can start moving on it.
That's right. No, you're absolutely right, Mike. And we're on our third year with the fellowship program. We've had quite a few students come through. Those were our first students right there. And they had an amazing experience up here. They went home and talked to people about what, because they didn't know anything about, they didn't even know we had American wild horses left. And when they came up here and saw, you can tell how they're completely different than domestic horses. They were blown away. And it was
Yeah, let's play this little piece real quick.
Director of Wild Horse Fire Brigade. We're here at our research site in the mountains of the Siskiyou Cascades, and I'm here with the Sacramento, California State University of Sacramento students, Shelby and Cerise, and they're here, first students in our fellowship program, and this is their first day was yesterday. So I just had a couple of questions. So Shelby, maybe you can tell us what you hope to achieve with your fellowship.
I'm really excited to learn more about naturally living horses and how they interact with their environment, and excited to look at the population and start getting a better understanding of how they're living out here.
Right on. And so we had a pretty interesting first day yesterday. Maybe you could tell us about that, Cerise.
Yeah, yesterday we were able to take a little hike on one of our first trails, and right around the plateau, a big band of horses came running down, about, I don't know, over 15. They saw us and they had to change track, but that was pretty amazing to see them in action. And yeah, so beautiful.
Right on. Well, we really appreciate you choosing this fellowship program up here, and we're hoping to continue the program and educate people about the value of wild horses on our American landscape.
Boom. And you're doing it. You're doing it.
Yep.
It's amazing. So it does make a difference, educating people like you're doing right now. I've never heard of anything like this. To me, like you said, it's like so much common sense. It's like ridiculous. I can't believe that our BLM is not more involved with this. It's pretty disgusting, but it's typical of government. They're not for the people anymore. They're for themselves. So we need to change that and get involved. And the only way we can change that is get involved.
Yeah, you're right. I was nominated to be on the National Wild Horse and Burro Advisory Board. They called me up. I got nominated by a sitting U.S. Congressman, Greg Walden. He was the head of the House Energy Commission. And I got letters from all these people, and they called me up and they wanted me to be on the advisory board. But that's when my wife was dying in a hospital up in Portland. So I was driving from my ranch 400 miles up to OHSU, where she was in the hospital room. So I spent a day at the ranch, keeping everything glued together, and 6 days at her bedside. And so I told him, I said, I can't take the position right now. My wife is more important right now, and I'm the last man standing for her. So, and I think that kind of made him angry. Because I turned down a job that everybody out there in the advocacy would want, and to have influence over the BLM. But I got to be loyal, God, family, and country. The bottom line is and then they don't like me criticizing them. But hey, I still believe this is a constitutional republic. And part of our civic duty as citizens is to criticize the civil servants. They work for us. We're not grapes to be squeezed. We're not grapes to be squeezed by them. They work for us, and they need to remember that when they get elected, they need to honor the oath. They serve us. And, so it's not government of the government, by the government, and for the government. That's not what it is. And they need to, that's got to get fixed. But in the meantime, if we all die from wildfire smoke, and it's killing people on the East Coast too. Those numbers I gave you, 36,000 dead every year and 218 billion a year. That's just the Western U.S. Wow. I didn't want to make it so complex that the supercomputer couldn't handle it, because even in Washington, D.C. and further down, even Florida got smoked out of Canada a couple of years ago. That smoke from Canada.
We sure did. Yep.
Yeah, and people died. What the reason it's dying is American Chemical Society just came out with a big report in December 2025, and they said that they've just discovered there's 21% more volatile organic compounds, VOCs. Everybody hates VOCs. Why? Because we know it kills people. The VOCs are deadly. That's beyond the PM 2.5. So the bottom line is we're a lot of people are dying. We can fix this. We got to fix it. You know, my mom said, clean up your own bedroom before you worry about anybody else's bedroom. I believe that in our county. Let's fix our county first and our state, and then we'll worry about the rest of it. You know, we gotta start somewhere. And you know, it's all doable, Mike, and it's cash positive. I could save President Trump wants to save money.
Yeah.
President Trump, I can save you $5 billion a year. We can save a lot of those 36,000 people a year from dying. Okay. Not all of them, because, you know, we don't have enough horses to do the whole job yet, but we can make that first step to saving lives and saving a lot of that money. But this program will save $5 billion a year with a B.
It would probably make that much or more, actually, because I've been to, when I was on the trail, I saw where they had tree farms, and they were, you know, land managed, and the trees were like magnificent, nicely spaced, and they were making lots of money. You know, managing these trees were absolutely beautiful. It was one of probably the most beautiful places I walked through on the whole trail. Well, and one of the ones that was managed by an independent, you know, private group.
Right. Well, you hit on something really important, Mike. I'm glad you brought that up. They actually want to start a new crypto based on carbon forests. So during the fires last year, the Slater fire, I look at whose land gets burned. I study fire ecology. There was a 5,000 acre forest that was owned by a big investment company in Portland that was selling carbon credits to investors to offset, carbon credits. And guess what? The whole forest burned to the ground. So can you imagine the reversal of fortune on that? They got to give back that money. They no longer have those carbon credits. It's like, you know, there's no basis anymore for it's just became evaporated.
Not only give it back,
we can be an insurance.
Need to pay.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Well, we can protect those assets. You know, we could deploy groups of horses around the carbon forest, the carbon credit forest, and actually prevent those investments from going up in smoke.
Good point. Good point. And I'm sure, you know, just like we're talking about, those people want to, you know, keep their investment, and that would be the great way to do it. And the land management, of course, is, you know, doing the trees right and so forth. You probably, you know, harvest the trees at some point. That would be very profitable. And then the animals would come back, and, you know, you could, you know, hunters come back and, you know, pay a price to go in. There's places down in Texas where they, you know, pay a lot of money to go hunt. So there's a lot of positive things that can come out of that. So yeah, this is the step forward. We need to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe it's true. And I got grandkids. I want them to see the America that I enjoyed growing up. I don't want them to see the whole West burn to the ground. You know, we are burning forests faster than they're recovering. And at this rate, in just a mere 30 years, forests will be a thing of the past. You know, you drive through Dunsmuir, not far from you, and you look at that, you know, they're basically charcoal poles standing. I mean, you know, that was a gorgeous forest at one point, and that's what's happening in America. This
same around Lake Shasta.
Stop.
God, got burned bad a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It's just
we just have to. I mean, you can't get AmeriCorps out there with weed eaters. I mean, we're talking 20 million acres in California, you know. And when you prescribe burn, here's the other thing, Mike. They're trying to sell us on prescribed burning now. Well, when you have prodigious fuel, I was going to tell you about pyrochemistry. When you have all this fuel that's not grazed anymore, it burns abnormally hot. Well, what it's doing is producing brand new chemistry. Okay. When you heat certain chemicals like terpenes, for instance, that are in plants, when you heat them at like 800, 900 degrees, normal forest temperature, forest fire temperature, you get certain resulting compounds. But when you start heating them up around 1500, we've seen molten aluminum, so we know the fires are that hot or more. You get brand new compounds formed. And these scientists are going, man, we don't even know what these things are. They're carcinogens. We know they're VOCs, and that's what the American Chemical Society, the brand new study from December of 2025 says. 21% more VOCs, and we don't even know they're in the class of carcinogens. So
Hmm.
the thing is when you do prescribed burn on landscape with prodigious fuel, what happens? You make more toxic smoke. You're making the problem worse. And in the winter, when we need just a little, we get a breath of fresh air in the winter, right? Well, they're out there making more toxic smoke because you can't do burns on prodigious fuels. And even the RMPs, the range management plans for these big forests, they have a brand new RMP for the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument. And they had to do that because Obama added a whole bunch of land. So they had to do a brand new range management plan. And right in their own literature, they say all these different areas. Oh, we got to do understory fuel management, but we can't do prescribed burning until we do mechanical management to reduce the fuel load so it doesn't damage the landscape. It's in writing in their own plans that they can't even engage prescribed fire because it will damage the landscape because of exothermic energy. We've got to start managing the herbivory, and I mean everything. I mean cattle in the right spot, sheep in the right spot, goats around airports and industrial areas, but then horses in the remote areas where their predators live. And guess what that does? It pulls predators out of the ag lands. If you got enough horses on the other side of a hill where wolves are eating livestock and ranchers are like going, okay, and they put, deterrents on the wolves, they'll go eat the baby horses because it's easy pickings. Up here, I get 45, 50 babies every year. Only about 6 or 8 become 2-year-olds because the predators get them.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and then the big horses, the lions and the bears kill the big ones, and mountain lions could kill an adult horse easy.
Wow.
And they do. There's a study from the University of, in fact, Utah, that they looked at the mountain lions on the Great Basin. 60% of their diet is wild horses.
Huh.
So much for the BLMs, nothing eats them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the lies are so deep.
That's
I mean,
another
how can
reason
those
I love
guys-
to have the wild horses out there in the wild, because when I walked the trail, there was a mountain lion that had was out there, and I think I had a close encounter with it. And then I got to the next town, and they talk about how there was this wild mountain lion, and people had spotted it, and be careful out there. And I was like, ooh. So, yeah, I'd rather them be than looking for me or other hikers. So, and that's sometimes what they do.
Yeah,
they take out.
They do. If you take all the food out of the refrigerator, they're going to find a meal somewhere else. And lately, we've been seeing people being killed by lions here in California. A couple of brothers got attacked down by you. One brother died. The lion was feasting on him. The other brother was valiant. He tried to fight, but he was injured, and he had to barely escape with his own life. But his brother was killed by the lion.
Wow. Oh my God. That's sad. Wow, William, great intel, great information. It's, we did take down these bad government agencies or overcome them somehow and get those horses out there where they. Yeah.
Well, we need help, Mike. I mean, I'm working 120 hours. I don't get paid. We're an all volunteer nonprofit organization, Wild Horse Fire Brigade. I've been working my tail off for the last 12 years up here, Mike. If we don't get donations and support, we actually fund the whole Cal State program up here. We're on our 3rd year. We fund that out of our donations. Those kids, and a lot of them are underprivileged. We take care of gasoline and we buy food. They stay here 2 weeks with the herd. And we call it the good old method, because when you wake up with the horses and they're all around you, you get to see things that nobody has seen before. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's how Jane Goodall saw the apes making and using tools. She became part of the troop. She was embedded, right? Well, I became embedded with this herd, and I've already documented all kinds of things about what we got to do. And the thing is to make the program successful. Thank you, Mike. That's our PayPal account, and it makes it easy for people to donate. They just go to our website, hit donate. It brings that screen up, and they can donate using any credit card. But we're helping kids. We're funding the programs. Out of, we don't use any tax dollars for this. We let people decide if they want to support the reduction of deadly wildfire and toxic smoke, and help kids learn about American heritage. These are our heritage horses. We believe that the future generations of Americans should be able to see these special animals that help build our civilization in America. And our herd is unique because we have unique genetics that are still intact. Some of those gene lines came all the way down from Drake, not all of them, but some of them. You know, there were some cavalry horses that got in and did a little breeding here and there, and we're culling those out with, we're doing genetic studies. So we're going to try to keep the genetics pure, you know, and, yeah, if it wasn't for generosity of donors, we wouldn't be here today, you know, and, you know, we got to be successful. We got to do this, Mike. And I call upon people, if people will help us with a generous donation, we can make this happen and save probably at least thousands of lives a year, just initially, and billions of dollars for sure. So, you know, and then cookie cutter it into other states, you know, before the horses are all genetically sterilized, because the BLM is rounding them up. And,
Yeah, I'll definitely donate. Hopefully everybody's listening will donate and, you know, share the show, and we'll share it on my other platforms and get this out there. Yeah, this is definitely a worthy cause. You know, the government, you know, like we talked about, is not working for us. It's working against us. We need to change that. We got to do it. So they're going to continue to do stupid until we tell them otherwise, and we got to get aggressive with it. This is one of the programs that actually works. It's very simple, very easy, and we can make it, you know, start to make a difference out there. I look forward to seeing those horses out there.
I appreciate it, Mike, and I really appreciate your time and getting me in so quick on the show. It's been, you're an officer and a gentleman.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, it's a worthy cause, William. Thank you. You look a lot younger. You look like my age, 65. So good job.
No.
Staying young.
Well, I've been sharing breath with stallions. I don't know if it gives you extra life, but the wild stallions, they come up with the breath of God in them. You know, they're God's creations, and they still commune with God on top of the mountain, I believe.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I love that. All right, William, thanks so much. And we look forward to, I'd love to have you back on in the future, and we can talk a little bit more in detail. Hopefully, maybe I get out there and, you know, do some video with you out there, and you can show us around. And that'll be even better.
Love to have you and your sweetheart come up here, and we'll get a picture of you next to a wild mountain stallion that's breathing the breath of God. I mean, you'll feel it. You will, when these guys are nature's operators, boy, and they have a presence, boy. But anybody with me, they think they're with my family because they're family oriented, the way they look at the world. And somebody with me, they say, oh, Bill's got a new family member, let's go meet him. And that's how they look at it. They're completely wild, but they know, you know, that's how they look at the world. You can't evaluate horses using human value propositions. You have to learn how they look at the world. And that's what we've done. So that's why we can make this work. We know how to manage wild horses. Nobody else has done this. We're the only ones in the whole world that live with a wild herd and have done all this work.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, sir. Thanks so much. And like I said, we look forward to doing more with you in the future.
Thank you, sir.